I spent 45 years thinking my mother Eleanor was a simple person with simple needs. She cooked, cleaned, raised us kids, and never complained. I thought I knew everything about her favorite color, her fears, her dreams. I was completely wrong. Last month, my 76-year-old mother finally told me what she'd been holding back for decades, and I realized I had been seeing only the mask she wore for my benefit. The real Eleanor, the woman with complex thoughts, buried dreams, and a rich inner life had been invisible to me all this time. What I'm about to share with you isn't just a personal story, it's a wake-up call for anyone who has elderly parents. How many of us think we know our mothers, when really we only know the role they've played for us? How many brilliant, complex, fascinating women have spent decades hiding their true selves behind the mask of just being MOM? The conversation that changed everything happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. But what Eleanor revealed that day has completely transformed not just our relationship, but how I see my own life, my own choices, and what it really means to be a woman, a mother, and a human being. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you might realize that you've been making the same mistake I did, and there's still time to fix it. That mother I thought I knew for 45 years. I had a clear picture of my mother Eleanor. She was born in 1947, married my father at 22, had 3 children by 28, and devoted her life to making sure we were fed, clothed, and happy. She was the classic 1970 seconds housewife, always had dinner on the table at PM, kept an immaculate house, volunteered at our school, and seemed perfectly content with her quiet, predictable life. Eleanor was gentle, agreeable, and rarely expressed strong opinions about anything beyond family matters. When we asked what she wanted for Christmas, she'd say, "Whatever makes you happy." When we planned family vacations, she'd go along with whatever Dad suggested. When we talked about careers, politics, or current events, she'd listen politely, but rarely contributed much to the conversation. I thought this was just who she was, a naturally quiet, content person who found fulfillment in taking care of others. She seemed happy with her routine. Morning coffee, light housework, afternoon TV shows, evening dinner preparation. On weekends, she'd work in her small garden or read romance novels on the porch. As an adult, I maintained what I thought was a close relationship with Eleanor. I called her twice a week, visited every month, included her in all family celebrations. We talked about my kids, her health, family gossip, and daily logistics. She was always interested in my life, always supportive, always available when I needed advice about parenting or just wanted to vent about work stress. I was a good daughter, and she was a good mother. Or so I thought, but now I realize that in all those years of regular contact, in all those hours of conversation, I had never once asked Eleanor about her inner life. I never asked what she thought about when she was alone, what she dreamed about, what she regretted, what excited her, what frustrated her, or who she might have been if her life had taken a different path. I had reduced my complex, intelligent, fascinating mother to her functional role in my life, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. The day everything changed last month, I went to help Eleanor organize some old boxes in her basement. We were sorting through decades of family photos, school papers, and forgotten mementos when I came across something that stopped me cold, a thick folder filled with what looked like poetry and short stories, written in my mother's careful handwriting. "MOM, what is this?" I asked, holding up a particularly beautiful poem about ocean waves and longing. Eleanor glanced over and her face immediately changed. She looked embarrassed, almost guilty. "Oh, that's nothing," she said quickly, reaching for the folder. "Just some silly writing I used to do. We can throw that away." But I had already read enough to know this wasn't nothing. The writing was beautiful, sophisticated, deeply emotional. It revealed a mind that was creative, philosophical, and profoundly thoughtful. This was not the work of the simple, uncomplicated woman I thought I knew. "MOM, this is incredible," I said. "When did you write all this? Why didn't I know you were a writer?" Eleanor sat down heavily on an old chair and was quiet for a long time. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "Honey," she said quietly, "there's a lot about me you don't know. A lot I never told you." Something in her voice made me put down the folder and really look at her, not as MOM, but as a person. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, taking a shaky breath, "that for 45 years, I've been showing you the version of me I thought you needed to see. The good mother, the supportive wife, the woman who was happy just taking care of everyone else. But that's not all I am. That's not even most of who I am. The pain in her voice was unmistakable. Why? I asked. Why would you hide parts of yourself from us? Eleanor was quiet for another long moment. Then she said something that broke my heart, because I thought that's what love was. Disappearing so you could shine. The real Eleanor emerged. What happened next was the most honest conversation Eleanor and I had ever had. For 3 hours, sitting in that dusty basement surrounded by the artifacts of our family life, my 76-year-old mother finally told me who she really was. I was never just a housewife, she began. I mean, I was a housewife, but I was also a writer, a thinker, a person with my own dreams and ambitions. I had to put all of that aside when I got married and had children, but it never went away. It just went underground. Eleanor told me that she had been writing poetry and short stories since she was 16 years old. She had won several writing contests in high school and had been accepted to study English literature at the State University. But when she got engaged to my father at 20, the expectation was that she would abandon those plans and focus on being a wife and mother. It wasn't your father's fault, she said quickly. He's a good man, and he loved me. But it was the 1960s, and women didn't really have the same choices then. I thought I had to choose between having a family and pursuing my own interests. So, I chose family, and I tried to convince myself that was enough, but it wasn't enough. For decades, Eleanor had been living a double life. During the day, she fulfilled her role as wife and mother. But early in the morning, before anyone else was awake, she would write. Late at night, after everyone had gone to bed, she would read literature and philosophy books that she ordered from the library and kept hidden in her bedroom closet. I read everything, she told me, her eyes lighting up for the first time. Virginia Woolf, Simone de Beauvoir, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison. I studied philosophy, psychology, history. I educated myself in all the things I never got to study in college. I was stunned. But MOM, you never talked about any of this. You never mentioned these authors or shared your thoughts about what you were reading. Eleanor's expression grew. Sad again. Who was I going to talk to? Your father wasn't interested in literature. You kids were busy with your own lives, and I had been just MOM for so long that I didn't think anyone would take my thoughts seriously anyway. She paused, then added quietly, I got used to keeping that part of myself separate. I told myself it was selfish to want intellectual stimulation when I had a family to take care of. I convinced myself that being a good mother meant making myself smaller. The dreams she never shared. As Eleanor continued talking, I learned about dreams and ambitions I never knew she had. She told me about the novel she had been working on for 15 years, a complex story about women in small towns and the secret lives they led. She showed me journals filled with observations about human nature, politics, and social issues that revealed a sharp, analytical mind. I always wanted to travel, she said wistfully. Not just family vacations to the beach, but real travel. I wanted to see the places I read about: Paris, where Hemingway wrote; London, where Virginia Woolf walked along the Thames. I wanted to take literature classes, maybe even teach someday. She had planned to pursue these interests after we kids left home, but by then, she had fallen into such a deeply ingrained pattern of self-suppression that she didn't know how to change. I kept waiting for permission, she said. Permission from your father to travel. Permission from you kids to have my own interests. Permission from society to be more than just a mother and wife. But I realized that permission was never going to come. Eleanor also revealed frustrations I had never suspected. She was deeply knowledgeable about politics and had strong opinions about social justice issues. That she had learned to keep these thoughts to herself because women weren't supposed to be too political. She was passionate about environmental conservation decades before it became mainstream, but she never spoke up because she didn't want to seem difficult or opinionated. I voted in every election, she told me, but I never told anyone how I voted or why, because I thought my job was to support your father's views, not have my own. The more she talked, the more I realized how much energy it must have taken to suppress so much of herself for so many decades. The Eleanor I was discovering was brilliant, curious, creative, and passionate, everything I had thought she wasn't. Why she hid her true self? When I asked Eleanor why she had kept so much of herself hidden, her answer was both heartbreaking and illuminating. I thought that's what good mothers did, she said. I thought love meant putting everyone else's needs before my own. including my need to be intellectually stimulated and creatively fulfilled. I watched my own mother do the same thing. She was incredibly intelligent, but she never pursued her own interests because she was too busy taking care of everyone else. Eleanor explained that she had internalized messages about what it meant to be a good woman that required her to be selfless to the point of self-erasure. I thought if I was too complex, too demanding, too interested in my own life, I would be selfish. And selfish mothers were bad mothers. She also revealed that she had been afraid of being judged. What if I shared my writing and it wasn't good enough? What if I expressed my political opinions and people disagreed with me? What if I pursued my dreams and failed? It felt safer to keep those parts of myself private, but perhaps most sadly, Eleanor had convinced herself that her family wouldn't be interested in who she really was. You all seemed so busy with your own lives, she said. I didn't think you wanted to hear about my thoughts on literature or my opinions about the world. I thought my job was to be supportive, not to be intellectually challenging. This broke my heart because I realized it was partly true. In all my years of talking with Eleanor, I had never asked her what she thought about books, politics, art, or philosophy. I had treated her as a repository of family information and emotional support, but I had never approached her as an intellectual equal or even as a person with her own complex inner life. The cost of hiding, as Eleanor continued sharing. I began to understand the enormous cost of hiding so much of herself for so many decades. She described feeling lonely even when surrounded by family, intellectually starved despite having access to books and ideas, and creatively frustrated despite having natural talent and passion for writing. There were times when I felt like I was disappearing, she said quietly, like I was becoming invisible, even to myself. I would look in the mirror and not recognize the person looking back because I had been MOM and wife for so long that I had forgotten how to be Eleanor. She talked about the exhaustion of constantly monitoring herself, making sure never to say too much, never to seem too interested in topics that might make others uncomfortable, never to take up too much space in conversations. I became an expert at asking questions about other people's lives so I wouldn't have to reveal anything about my own thoughts and feelings. Eleanor also described a deep sense of grief for the paths not taken and the person she might have been. Sometimes I would lie awake at night thinking about the woman I could have been if I had made different choices. Not because I regret having a family, but because I wish I could have had both a family and a full sense of myself, perhaps most painfully. She revealed that she had often felt like she was living a lie. I love you kids, and I love your father, but I spent decades pretending to be someone I wasn't. Even with the people I loved most, I couldn't be authentic. That's a terrible way to live. The turning point, he asked Eleanor what had changed. What had made her finally willing to share this hidden part of herself with me? Her answer surprised me. You're 52 years old now, she said. You've lived enough life to understand that people are complicated. And I'm 76. I don't know how much time I have left. And I realized I don't want to die having never been truly known by my own daughter. She also mentioned that she had been watching me struggle with my own identity issues, balancing career and motherhood, trying to maintain friendships while managing family responsibilities, feeling guilty for wanting time for my own interests. I realized that maybe my experience could help you. Maybe if I had been more honest about the challenges of being a woman, about the importance of maintaining your own identity, even when you're caring for others, you wouldn't have to figure it all out on your own. Eleanor's decision to open up was also motivated by a desire to be helpful in a different way. I've spent 45 years helping you with practical things, babysitting, cooking, emotional support, but maybe now I can help you with something deeper. Maybe I can share what I've learned about being a woman, about finding yourself, about living authentically. Discovering my real mother. Over the following weeks, Eleanor and I had a series of conversations that completely transformed our relationship. She shared her writing with me, and I was amazed by its depth and beauty. She told me about the books that had influenced her thinking, and we started having the kinds of intellectual discussions I had never imagined possible with my mother. I learned that Eleanor had strong opinions about contemporary literature, politics, and social issues. She was well informed about current events and had thoughtful perspectives on everything from climate change to women's rights to economic inequality. She had been following these issues for decades but had never shared her thoughts because she didn't think anyone would be interested. Eleanor also showed me the journals she had been keeping for years, not just records of family events, but deep reflections on life, aging, relationships, and society. Her observations were insightful, often witty, and sometimes profound. I was reading the work of a philosopher, not just a mother. I've been thinking about writing a memoir, she told me during one of our conversations. Not just about being a wife and mother, but about what it's like to be an intelligent woman in a world that doesn't always value intelligence in women. About what it costs to hide parts of yourself, and what it's like to reclaim them later in life. I encouraged her enthusiastically, and she began working on the project with an energy and excitement I hadn't seen in her for years. Watching Eleanor come alive as she embraced her identity as a writer was one of the most beautiful things I had ever witnessed. The ripple effect. Eleanor's decision to share her true self with me had unexpected ripple effects throughout our family. My father, who had been married to Eleanor for 54 years, was initially surprised by her newfound openness about her intellectual interests, but he quickly became supportive and even proud. I always knew your mother was smart, he told me, but I didn't realize how much she had been keeping to herself. I feel bad that she didn't feel comfortable sharing these things with me earlier. My siblings had similar reactions: surprise, followed by fascination and admiration. My brother started having long phone conversations with Eleanor about history and politics, topics they had never discussed before. My sister discovered that Eleanor was an excellent source of advice about balancing personal ambitions with family responsibilities. But the biggest change was in my own life. Seeing Eleanor reclaim her authentic self gave me permission to examine the ways I had been hiding parts of myself. I realized that I, too, had been suppressing interests and opinions in order to be the good daughter, good wife, and good mother I thought I was supposed to be. Inspired by Eleanor's example, I started pursuing some creative interests I had abandoned years earlier. I began speaking up more in conversations about topics I cared about. I stopped apologizing for having opinions or taking up space in discussions. Most importantly, I started really listening to the women in my life, my daughters, my friends, my colleagues, and asking them about their inner lives, their thoughts, their dreams. I realized that if I had been seeing only the surface of my own mother for 45 years, I was probably missing the full humanity of other important women in my life as well. Lessons for every family. Eleanor's story taught me several important lessons that I think apply to many families. We often reduce our mothers to their functional roles. We see them as sources of care, support, and practical help, but we forget that they're complete human beings with rich inner lives, complex thoughts, and unfulfilled dreams. Many women of Eleanor's generation sacrifice parts of themselves for their families. This wasn't necessarily wrong, but it means that there are millions of elderly women walking around with hidden talents, suppressed dreams, and unexpressed thoughts that their families know nothing about. It's never too late to really get to know your parents. Even if you think you know everything about your mother or father, there are probably depths you haven't explored. Asking different kinds of questions can lead to surprising discoveries. Elderly parents often have wisdom and insights that we're not accessing. Eleanor had spent decades thinking deeply about life, relationships, and society, but she had never shared these insights because no one had asked for them. Authentic relationships require seeing people as whole human beings. If we only relate to our parents in their roles as mom and dad, we're missing out on knowing them as complete people. The woman I never knew 6 months after that first conversation in the basement, Eleanor is a different person, or rather, she's finally being the person she always was. She joined a book club and quickly became one of its most insightful members. She started submitting her writing to literary magazines and has had several pieces published. She's planning her first international trip to visit the literary sites she's read about for decades. More importantly, our relationship has been completely transformed. Instead of just checking in about family logistics, we now have deep conversations about books, ideas, and life experiences. Eleanor has become not just my mother, but also my friend, my intellectual companion, and one of my most trusted advisors. I often think about all the years we lost to surface-level interactions, all the wisdom and insight Eleanor had to offer that I never thought to access, but I try not to dwell on regret. Instead, I am grateful that we figured it out while there's still time to build a real, authentic relationship. Eleanor often says that revealing her true self has been liberating in ways she never expected. I feel like I'm finally living in full color instead of black and white, she told me recently. I wish I had been brave enough to do this sooner, but I'm grateful it's happening at all. A message for adult children: if you have elderly parents, I want to challenge you to ask yourself, do you really know them? Have you ever asked your mother about her dreams, her regrets, her opinions on topics beyond family matters? Have you ever wondered what your father thinks about when he's alone? What he wishes he had done differently? What still excites him about life? Many of us maintain loving but superficial relationships with our aging parents. We check on their health, include them in family celebrations, and provide practical support when needed. But we may be missing the opportunity to know them as complete human beings with complex inner lives and valuable wisdom to share. Eleanor and I last 45 years to a relationship that was loving but incomplete. We both played our prescribed roles, dutiful daughter and selfless mother, without ever exploring who we really were beneath those roles. I am sharing this story because I don't want other families to make the same mistake. Your elderly mother isn't just MOM, she's a woman who has lived through decades of experiences, developed complex thoughts and opinions, and may have hidden talents and dreams she's never shared. Your aging father isn't just dad, he's a man with a rich inner life, hard-won wisdom, and perhaps unfulfilled aspirations he's never discussed. Questions that changed everything. The transformation in my relationship with Eleanor started with asking different kinds of questions. Instead of, how are you feeling? I started asking, what have you been thinking about lately? Instead of, do you need anything? I started asking, what are you reading that's interesting? Here are some questions that can help you discover the real person behind the parental role. What did you want to be when you were young, before you had children? What's something you've always wanted to learn but never had the chance to? If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why? What book has influenced you the most? What do you think about when you're alone? What's something you wish you had said or done differently in your life? What are you most curious about right now? What would you want people to know about you beyond your role as a parent? These aren't necessarily easy questions, and they might lead to surprising answers, but they can also lead to the kind of authentic relationship that Eleanor and I now share. The gift of being truly known. Of the most beautiful things Eleanor has said to me since we started having real conversations is this: for the first time in my life, I feel truly known by someone I love, and that's the greatest gift you could have given me. But the truth is, she gave me an equally valuable gift by showing me who she really was. Eleanor taught me that it's never too late to become more authentic in our relationships. She showed me that love isn't about hiding parts of yourself to make others comfortable. It's about having the courage to be known fully and accepting others fully. She also taught me that every elderly person carries within them a lifetime of accumulated wisdom, experiences, and insights that we can access if we're willing to ask the right questions and really listen to the answers. Final thoughts. I'm 52 years old, and I just met my real mother for the first time. It's both sad and wonderful. Sad because of all the years we lost to superficial interactions. Wonderful because we still have time to build something authentic and meaningful. Eleanor is 76, and she's finally living as her full self. She's writing, traveling, expressing her opinions, and engaging with the world as the intelligent, complex, fascinating woman she's always been. Watching her bloom at this stage of life has been one of the most inspiring experiences of my life. But this story isn't just about Eleanor and me. It's about the millions of families who are settling for relationships that, while loving, are incomplete. It's about the elderly parents who have so much to offer beyond practical help and emotional support, and the adult children who are missing out on knowing them as complete human beings. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: it's never too late to really get to know your parents. Beneath the roles they've played for you, MOM, dad, caregiver, supporter, or complex, interesting people with rich inner lives and valuable wisdom to share. Don't wait until it's too late to discover who they really are. Ask the questions that matter. Listen with genuine curiosity. Be prepared to be surprised by what you learn. The woman I thought was my simple, uncomplicated mother turned out to be one of the most interesting people I've ever known. The mother you think you know completely might have hidden depths you've never imagined. There's still time to find out. Thank you for listening to this very personal story. If it resonates with you, please share it with others who might benefit from thinking about their relationships with their elderly parents in a new way. Leave a comment below and tell me about a time when you discovered something surprising about a parent or elderly family member. Have you ever asked your mother or father about their inner life, their dreams, Their thoughts beyond family matters. And if you haven't had that conversation yet, maybe this is your sign to start. Remember, every elderly person was once young, full of dreams and ambitions. Many of them still are there, just waiting for someone to ask.